Okay, starting 2024 with a bang. Hello my lovely readers and queers, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. I am Franny and today I'm going to talk about the books that I read in the month of January. So this is going to be my January wrap-up, and let me tell you, 2024 started with a bang. I can honestly say that I enjoyed all the books that I read in January. They're not all 5 stars, of course, there are some 3 stars in there, but I honestly had a good experience reading all of them. There's Charlie, what's happening? Hey buddy. My dog is here again, so please excuse any noise that you might hear in the background. He's here to stay for this video, I think. As I was saying, even if they're not all new favorites, I had a very good reading time and I really cannot complain. If the rest of the year is even remotely close to how January was for me reading-wise, I am great. This is going to be a great reading year and I am going to be the happiest reader alive. But let's dive right in. In the month of January, I read a total of 6 books, 3 of which were ebooks, 2 audiobooks, and 1 physical book that I actually own. If I have to be honest, I did buy one of the ebooks that I read and is now on its way. So I don't know if that counts as 2 ebooks and 2 physical books, but I did read it as an ebook. So maybe it's 3 ebooks, 1 book, 1 physical book, and 2 audiobooks. Let's keep it simple. Some stats for the month of January. I read a total of 6 books. 4 out of those 6 books were LGBT+. 83% of the books that I read was fiction and 17% was non-fiction, which basically amounts to the 1 non-fiction book that I read. As for the rating, I gave 1 book 3 stars, 1 book 3.5 stars, 1 book 4.25 stars, and 3 books 5 stars for an average month rating of 4.29 stars, which is a pretty good star rating for the first month of 2024. As I always do with my wrap-ups, I will talk about the books in the chronological order in which I read them, so I am starting with Feelings by Manjit Thapp, and this is the ebook that I purchased and that I cannot wait to have here, turn its pages and just revel in the beauty of this graphic novel memoir. This is about the author's relationship with art, with the passing of time, with the seasons, and with her seasonal depression, and it was just stunning. There are only a few sentences here and there. It is mostly told through drawings that are so expressive and beautiful and communicative. I was speechless. The way that the artist played with the image composition and with the colors and the palettes, it is stunning. It is a work of beauty, and that is why I had to have the physical book, and I cannot wait to hold it in my hands and just reread the whole thing, because it took me 30 minutes, maybe even less, and it was stunning, and I really want to go through that reading experience again. I just loved it. This is a 5 stars read, absolutely recommend. Stunning, just stunning. The second book that I read in January was Make You Mine This Christmas by Lizzie Huxley-Jones, and this is a sapphic Christmas romance in which we follow Av. She lives in New York. She is a social media manager, if I'm not mistaken, for a non-profit zoo or something that had to do with animals. And a few days before Christmas, she finds out that her parents are not going to be home for Christmas. They're actually going on a cruise to celebrate, I don't remember which anniversary, and now she finds herself without a plan and wanting to not spend Christmas alone. That same day, she goes to a party with a friend of hers, and there she meets a guy. They just hang out, they share a terrible kiss under a mistletoe. They both laugh about it, but they both go back to Hav's house to have a drink and just chat like friends would do, because they feel very comfortable around each other. But the next morning, due to a series of misunderstandings and moments of sheer panic, Av agrees to go to Christopher's house, the boy's house, for Christmas, so that the parents won't bother him because he just broke up with his ex and a bunch of stuff. But when Hav is going to London to meet Christopher at the station and go together to his house, she has a meet-cute with a girl in a bookstore, and the girl leaves without Hav knowing who she is, without getting her number or anything, only to find out later that same day that that girl is actually Christopher's sister. And that does not bode well, does it? I thought it was a YA book. It is actually a romance book with a few explicit scenes, so just so you know, going into it, it is not too spicy, it is not too steamy, but there is some sexy times going on. Did I like the writing style? No, not really. Did I care for the romance? No, I did not. I did not really see the chemistry between Hav and Kit, who is Christopher's sister, but I just loved the characters. They were so much fun. I loved the banter between all the characters and the friends and secondary characters that come into play throughout the book. And I think I just read the book at the right time. It was a right book at the right time situation for me because it is set in York and there are these beautiful descriptions of York during the Christmas time and the shambles in York and then the Paddington station in London, and that's where I was in December. My wife and I went to our honeymoon to London and York and Edinburgh. So I saw these places with my own eyes. I saw them at Christmas time. I saw the mulled wine and the Christmas lights and the shambles full of people wandering around buying Christmas presents. Like, I lived that. And when I was reading the descriptions in the book, they were so well done that they brought me back to that place. And it just warmed my heart immensely. And so despite the fact that I did not care about the romance in a romance book and I didn't really like how it was written, I still loved the description, I still loved the setting, I loved the characters, and as I've said, I loved the banter, and these are characters that are going to stay in my mind. It was just hilarious. There were some scenes that were absolutely hilarious, and so yeah, I kind of enjoyed it and I gave it 3.5 stars. If you want to read a Christmas book that is going to give you the Christmas Hallmark movie vibes and feelings, but sapphic, but queer, but with lesbians and bisexuals and trans characters, then this book is the right fit for you. While I was reading Make Your Mind This Christmas, I was listening to the audiobook of OK Cupid by Maison Deaver. I have a full review up on my channel for this book. I will leave it linked up in the cards and in the description down below. But long story short, this book is about a teenager Cupid who is agender named Jude, and their assignment as Cupid is to infiltrate a high school and make two people fall in love. And they start falling in love not only with this new life but also with Hui, the trans boy that they are supposed to bring back together with someone else. And there's a whole bunch of teen drama right there. I liked this book. I liked the representation. I think that Maison Deaver could have done so much more. I had a few issues with the Cupid aspect. We were not given much information, much background, much world building regarding this new element that was introduced by the author. I was frustrated most of the time because I had so many questions that went unanswered, and there were also so many YA tropes that I think were really avoidable in this one. They were not really justified considering the circumstances, considering that our main character is a Cupid and supposedly an expert on love. You know, I give it 3 stars. It was good. It was a very pleasant reading experience. I loved the audiobook and I recommend the audiobook, but it was not as good as the feeling of falling in love, and I wanted to fall in love with this book and I didn't. It was just okay. And now onto a book that, oh my goodness, I absolutely loved, and I cannot believe that I've waited so long to get to it. Like, what the heck was I doing? And that book is Gwen Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. This is a queer YA historical fiction retelling of, you know, the Arthurian legend. And in this world, the kingdom is Catholic, and the king is trying to bridge a divide between Catholics and cultists who believe in the Arthurian myth, believe that Merlin was magic, and they believe that the reincarnation, in a way, of Arthur will come back in the future at some point. And just like history taught us, the way to unite families and bring together opposed political parties who would rather kill each other is marriage, and that is why the king's daughter Gwen is betrothed to Arthur de Lacy, who is the son of one of the cultists. But as the title says, Gwen and Art are not in love. They haven't seen each other in years, and Art is going back to Camelot for the melee and the tournament and those things that they did in medieval times. And when they see each other again, it's pure hate, just like they hated each other when they were children. They cannot stand each other at all. To complicate things further, Gwen catches Art kissing a boy, and Arthur finds a diary that Gwen had hidden in which she was writing all about this gorgeous, fascinating knight named Bridget that she was obsessed with. And Bridget is a female knight. So the two make a pact and they will try to pretend that they're, happy and cannot wait to be engaged and married and all those things when they're actually covering each other to, pursue their interests separately. And this book was just everything. I loved it. Short break to let the dog out, but now I'm back and we can continue. So I didn't really care that much for the romances. I mean, I did because those characters, they're such precious human beings and they deserved all the love in the world. And I was so happy when certain things happened. But what I loved the most, what made me smile, what made me happy, what made me devour the book and think about it nonstop is the relationship between the characters. The beautiful, incredible, teasing friendship that develops between Gwen and Art, and also the relationship between Gwen and her brother Gabriel, and also the friendship between Arthur and his bodyguard, but actually only true friend, Sydney. Oh my goodness, Sydney was absolutely hilarious. I loved all the characters. I was there for the friendship. I was there to see them banter and tease each other and just be there for each other when it really mattered, when they needed to talk about what they were experiencing and what they were feeling, because we are in a world where being gay, being bisexual is not really contemplated, is not really okay, and the characters are finding out about their sexuality and they're dealing with all these feelings and internalized homophobia and fear. So it gets quite heavy and quite sad, but it was so beautiful to see all of them on their journey and coming to terms with who they are and accept who they are. It was so precious. And this is not a spoiler, so I am going to say it. I loved the fact that Art find himself in the situation more than once of possibly outing other people, and he doesn't, and he's so great and lovely and incredible in those moments that I literally just melted right there and then. Also, I loved Lex Croucher's writing style. I'm obsessed. It read like a medieval story. It read like something that was set in that time. It read elegant, like wonderful flowery writing, but at the same time it was about teens being teenagers and being dramatic and bantering and all that, and it was a perfect mix and balance. I don't know how they pulled it off, but I loved it. I loved it so much, and now I want to read everything else that Lex Croucher has written because it was so well written. Okay, this is it. This is the best book that I read in the month of January, hands down. It was so good. I devoured it. I loved it. 100% recommend. If you end up reading one book out of this whole video that I'm making, please let it be this one. I mean, there's another one that I really recommend, but it's quite short, so does it really count? Not really. It's not that big of an effort, but this one, please commit to it. It is so good. The action scenes, the character development, everything was so well done. It was perfect. I loved it. I laughed. I cried. It was fantastic. And I'm going to read you a quote from the book because it is so beautiful and I just loved it. Let me read it to you. There were so many paragraphs and scenes and chapters that I underlined, that I marked because they were either hilarious or brought me to tears or so emotional. There was something going on with them, but to fully appreciate them, you would have to read the whole thing, and I cannot do it here, obviously, because you have to read the whole book to get them and understand them and experience the pathos, But there's this one quote that can stand on its own, and I want to read it to you guys. To be truly brave, first you must be afraid. And to be afraid, you must have something you cannot bear to lose. And scene. Next, I finally listened to the audiobook of The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. This is the second novel in the Molly the Maid series. The Maid is the first book. I read it and reviewed it 2 years ago when it first came out. I think at the end of last year, the sequel came out and I didn't get to it immediately because I was waiting for the audiobook. And this month it arrived and I listened to it immediately and it was so good. We are back to the Grand Regency Hotel. Molly is a maid at the hotel. She was actually promoted to being head maid. And just like in the first book, at the beginning of the story, there's a murder. They are preparing the tea room for a big event where a mysterious author is going to make a big announcement. But right when the author is going to make this announcement, he drinks a sip from his cup of tea and he dies on the spot. And the maids were the ones who prepared the tea cart, so of course they're prime suspect. And Molly finds herself unwillingly involved once again in the investigation and trying to find out who the murderer is. And there's a whole backstory that actually connected her to this man who died in very interesting ways, and that was so fun to see because we are following the present storyline where they are investigating and a past storyline where Molly was a kid and she was going with her grandma to clean and polish the silver in this big mansion. I have to say, I didn't care that much about the past storyline, though I do understand that it was important to know what was happening and why it was happening in the present, and that was okay. I did like the mystery. I think it was well done. The key to solving the mystery was perhaps a bit too forced. It didn't convince me as much. I feel like nobody would really notice that thing. The connection between this key and finding out who the person was and the motive and everything was a bit weak, and that's why my rating is not as strong as it was for the first book, but I still loved listening to it. If there was going to be a third book in the series, I would pick it up immediately again because this story is just so good. It's a great cozy mystery. Molly is such a great character, and once again I appreciated so much seeing her relationship with her dead grandmother, who took her in when she was a baby and brought her up and taught her everything, especially how to relate and communicate with others and how to exist in a world that for her works in a different way. It is never said explicitly on the page, but Molly is very clearly autistic, and you can see that in how she speaks and how she acts, and so she relates to the world in a different way, and her grandmother understood that there was something different in her and helped her out the best way that she could, showed her the way to have a great autonomous life. And her grandmother was already dead at the beginning of the first book, so we never actually saw her in the present time, but somehow she's there. Almost in every page we feel her presence, we hear her words through Molly. She's truly an important character in the story, and she had such a positive and optimistic look on life despite everything that she went through, and she had all these lovely sayings that she shared with Molly that I just loved. Some were just random but so cute, like chin up buttercup, but others were just so lovely that I had to write them down. One says, "What is hope if not the decision to bring some light into the dark?" And another one that I wrote down is, "Never fear new beginnings. One chapter must end for another to begin." And they're just so simple, but they hit you right here in the feels. I have been trying to search for news about the possibility of a third book coming out in the series because the second book leaves a door open for more in the series, for more to Molly's story. I haven't found anything yet, but a girl can hope, you know, because hope is the decision to bring light into the dark, if you catch my drift. Also, and I'm gonna go on a tangent here that has nothing to do with the actual book. I mean, it has to do with the characters, but it's not something in the book. It's just something that I am fantasizing about. And by the way, if you have read this book, let me know in the comments down below because I need to talk to someone who has read the book to see if they think the same thing that I'm thinking or if I'm just plain wrong, but I'm not. Let me paint you the scene. Juan, Molly's boyfriend, is totally irrelevant, okay? There's no chemistry there, never has been, not in the first book, not even in the second book, since he wasn't really there anyway. But Detective Stark, okay? Follow me along this journey. Detective Stark and Molly, okay? There's something there. There's sexual tension, there's sexual chemistry. I am not just imagining it, okay? Now, the perfect spin-off would be Molly being an officer in training with the NYPD and something, you know, blossoming between her and Detective Stark. That's the enemies to lovers plot right there. It was perfectly set up in this book. You really don't have to do anything. You just have to follow along the natural way of things. We don't need Juan. Who is Juan? You can call me crazy, and I know that it's never gonna happen because this book is so boringly heteronormative that I don't even think they know what queerness is in this book. Like, it doesn't even exist in another city, in another continent. It's just not there. It does not exist. Very much clearly. But it's right there. It's written on the page. The chemistry is there. The tension is there. I can totally see Detective Stark as a butch and Molly as a bisexual lady. It's right there on the page. I'm not making anything up. I'm just stating a fact, okay? I will go down with this ship. You can tell me whatever you want, but I am confident in what I'm saying. Anyways, I gave this book 4 stars. Absolutely recommend the audiobook and the series as a whole. It's a great cozy mystery series and you should check it out. And the last book that I read in January that was just the cherry on top is Different for Boys by Patrick Ness. It had been some time since I read a Patrick Ness book and I had missed it. Patrick Ness is such a brilliant, incredible writer. There is barely anything in this book. I mean, it is quite short. It's 100 pages and it's filled with illustrations and the text is, you know, down to a minimum, I want to say. There's no plot really. It's just about this weird, complicated, a bit codependent friendship between these two boys that is hiding something else beneath the surface. And Patrick Ness took this seed and brought it to life and gave life to this story. Throughout most of it, almost the whole thing, I was feeling nauseous. I was disgusted. I was sick to my stomach. I was hating these characters because they were being horrible, and you can see so clearly how strong fear can be, how fear can turn people against each other, how it can make them harmful towards themselves and towards others. And that was so hard to read. It made me sick to my stomach. But then something starts to change very slowly and you see care, you see affection, you see sacrifice, you see kids trying to feel less lonely, you see kids trying to find a place for them in the world, trying to find someone else that can understand who they are and what they're feeling and what they're going through. There's a challenge to heteronormative ideas of sex and sexuality. There's a challenge to taboos that do not make sense and should not exist. The whole book has blacked out sentences or words for, you know, swear words or words that are related to sex and the likes, because, you know, you should never talk about those things. And there are fairly so questions about these taboos and about virginity. When does a queer person lose their virginity? When does it happen? What constitutes as sex between two queer people? And most importantly, does it even matter? And you know, as I've said, Patrick Ness took all that and created this. And this was incredible. It was brilliant. It was so tough to read, but it was also filled with humor and heart and care and everything that Patrick Ness can do. And I had missed reading his books, and I need to read more. And I would just make everyone read this book, particularly teenagers, particularly boys. This would be mandatory reading for me. Obviously, I gave these 5 stars. Before leaving you, allow me to tell you what I'm currently reading, because you will hear more about these books in my February wrap-up. On my Kobo, I am reading The Remarkable Retirement of Edna Fisher by E.M. Anderson. This is a queer cozy fantasy book featuring an old main character, which is very exciting and interesting considering the genre, you know? And I am currently listening to Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting. I think I got the title right, by Claire Pooley. And this is another book that features an old main character. Am I channeling my old inner self in the month of February? This is a queer contemporary adult fiction book, and I am really loving this one as well. So it seems like February is also starting on a very good foot, and I look forward to seeing what else I'll be reading in February and talking to you about it. And this is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching it. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books, if you would like to, and what books you read in the month of January and which one was your favorite. I will see you very soon with my next video, but until then, have a good one, take care, and keep reading queer books. Warm hugs. Bye.